Welcome to the Brass Hand Woodwind Shop. This is the third video in the Building a Slide Trumpet project. Today I'm going to cut some tubing and shorten the slide, but I need to be careful not to cut off too much tubing, so I'm going to measure that and be very careful before I make a cut. To help me with that, I have a Herald trumpet, and this trumpet goes straight through, so it should be easy to measure. Here's the bell section. I'm going to measure that. Okay, that goes up to right here. So I'm going to mark that with an erasable marker. In the first video, I figured out that I need about 23 inches to slide out the tubing. So that takes me to right here. So I'll mark that. If I don't count the mouthpiece, that leaves me with only 8 inches to work with. For those 8 inches, I need some space for the hand side because I cannot have this hand side go straight to the end of the slide or else it will fall off. So I need probably about 2.5 to 3 inches there. So then I have 2.5 inches on both sides. That equals 5 inches. That leaves me with only 3 inches left to work with. That would include the crook, which is obviously more than 3 inches, and then the 2 cork barrels. So obviously I need to shorten things up a little more, and I need to leave room for tuning of the instrument too. What I'm going to do is replace the crook with a smaller crook, and then I'm going to have to cut down these cork barrels and make them quite small. If I do all that, I should have enough space for the slide to slide out all the way. Now I'm going to start cutting. I'm going to work with the outer hand side first because I pretty much know what length I need to cut that one. The slide has to pull out 11.5 inches to get into 7th position, and then I'm going to add 2.5 inches so that the slide does not fall off when you play it. So that equals 14 inches. So I'm going to mark this at 14 inches, right there, and I'm going to cut that. This is my little tubing cutter, and I'm going to line that up and tighten it. Okay, I'm going to roll that around the tube and make sure that it lines up. Okay, there we go. It lined up. If it does not line up, then it can start to spiral and go in either direction. So I wanted to make sure that that lined up, and it did, so we're good. Now that it's established, it should stay right on there, but I still need to check to make sure. This seems kind of weird doing this to a trombone slide because usually something like this would be a very bad thing to do. But in this case, I kind of need to do it to make a slide trumpet. Okay, there, one is off. Now I'll do the other one. I'll measure this. I want to make sure it's the same length. Okay, right there. And I'll make sure that is lined up. Okay, that looks good. And make sure it lines up, and it does. This just seems so wrong doing this to a trombone slide, and I hope that trombone players out there forgive me for this one. There it is. Look at that. Mini trombone slide. If the slide trumpet plays flat, I can always shorten up the slide tubes a little bit and make it play more sharp, but it's going to be hard to make them longer at this point. For the inner slide tubes, I cannot just cut them off right here. I need to make sure that there's room for the cork barrels. So what I need to do is take these slides out and cut down the cork barrels first, and after I do that, then I can cut these to length. Now I'm going to unsolder everything that needs to be unsoldered, and that would be this tube here that holds the slides together, and this other one. And I'm going to unsolder these slide tubes and pull those out of the cork barrels. And I'm also going to unsolder this crook here. I'm holding on the slide with the slide expander, or at least it's called a slide expander. I'm not using it to expand it, just to hold on. I'm going to unsolder this. Okay, that should work its way off eventually. Okay, that is off. Now I'm going to take this tube off too, and I'm going to shorten that one quite a bit. Because these slides have to come together a lot for the smaller crook. Now I'm going to unsolder the crook that I'm going to use for the outer hand slide crook. So I'm going to heat that up to 450 degrees, and then it will pop right off, or at least it should. Okay, come on. Probably up to temperature, but it's not coming off though. Might be. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to try something else. I put one slide expander on each of the tubes, so it should come out easier this time. And I'm putting a little bit of pressure on that, so as soon as the solder melts, it's going to twist, or at least it should. Okay. There. Now I'm going to get off the other one. And that came off easy. I put in the smaller diameter slide expander for the inner side. Now I'm going to try to unsolder the cork barrels. I'm not sure if these are going to come off or not. I think they are, but I'm not totally sure how they're soldered on there or what. So, okay, there it is. I see some solder. I see some beads of solder, so I think it's going to come off. I may need to pull it off with the tuning slide pliers though. Let's see. Yep. It's not going to come off easily. I have my tuning slide pliers and the mallet. I don't think I've ever used a tuning slide pliers to remove a cork barrel though, but I guess there's a first for everything. So I'm going to heat that up to temperature. And then, let's see here. I'll turn that off real quick and tap it. That moved a little bit, so it's going to come off, but the solder hardened, so I have to heat that up again. Okay, so I'm going to heat it up to temperature again, and when you do it this way, you have to heat it a little hotter than you normally would. Usually you heat it up to 450 degrees and then it comes off, but I have to turn the torch off and then tap it, so I have to allow for cooling time. There it goes. Okay, there. Now one of the cork barrels is off. So I will pull that all the way off. And I'm going to do that the same way. And you usually can tell when something is going to come unsoldered, because when you heat it up and get it close to temperature, usually little beads of solder show up in the crack of the joint. Okay, let's see. You know what? I'm going to have to turn that a little because the pliers won't get in there with the brace in the way. Okay. Okay, the solder hardens, so one more time should do it. There it is. Here are the cork barrels, and those are very small because it's a very old trombone. The modern trombones have a lot larger ones like that, and you can see the difference in size. Now I need to pull out the slide tubes. They go inside of the other tube there, so I need to heat the whole thing up to temperature before that will come out. But there are these little L braces on there, and those are just going to fall off when I get it up to temperature, and I kind of don't want them to fall off onto me or onto anything. So I'm just going to pull those off right now and get those out of the way. These parts are not really needed, or they won't be needed on a slide trumpet because the slide is so small. It's not really going to need the extra bracing. So I'm just going to leave those off. Okay, now I'm going to heat this up to temperature and then try to get the slide out of there. There it goes. Okay. I'm not sure if it's going to come this direction or not. It might be tapered or partially tapered. I'm going to see if it will come out this way. Yeah, I think it's coming out that way. Okay, probably need some more heat on it though. Okay, yeah. Or maybe not. I think what I might need to do is push it. I think what I might need to do is push part of the way out this way. Oh, it's not turning now. I don't know if it's gotten too cold. I don't know if it's the heat or if it's because it got wedged in there. I'll see if I can twist that out. Come on. Come on, move. Okay. Okay, I think I'm going to have to heat that up again and then tap it out. Okay. Or let's see if it. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to push this way. Then I'm going to cut the side and then pull it out. Now I'm going to use a tubing cutter again. And I'm going to cut off the end so that I can get the slide out. Okay, there. And I'll just pull that out now. There it is. Now I have to take out the other side tube, and that's going to be done the same way. You just need to heat it up to temperature. This one will probably be easier though. I don't think it's tapered, but I'll find out in just a minute. There it goes. Let's see if it comes out all the way or not. There it goes. Yep, it came out easily. And look at all that smoke. And now I'm going to take apart these little pieces because I need to get that brace out of the middle. There's one. There are all the parts to the slide trumpet. You know what? Technically it's a slide cornet. I keep calling it a slide trumpet, but technically it would be a slide cornet because it has the cornet bell and the cornet lead pipe. But this does not look very complicated like this. They're just a handful of pieces here. The next thing to do is clean up all these solder joints and get all the solder off of them. So I'm going to clean these up, and it's not hard to clean up solder. You just heat it up to temperature and then wipe it off. You want to make sure that you have at least 4 layers of cloth in between your finger and the hot surface. Now I'm going to turn it around. Now I'm going to do the other side. A lot of people are intimidated by soldering, but it's not really as hard as you would think. You just need to know the basics of it. And if you know the basics, you can get started. Now it is a little tricky to do some of the things at soldering, but most solder joints that you would do are fairly easy. And if people knew how easy they were, they probably would not be nearly as intimidated by it. And cleaning up solder is even easier than soldering itself, because all you need to do is wipe it off. It's a little scary at first to touch something that's so hot. But if you do it quickly, and if you keep the cloth in between you and your fingers, it's not really that hot, and you can barely feel it. Little drips of solder can go flying, so you need to be careful that anything that can be damaged is out of the way. And also you want to make sure that you don't start any fires when you solder. But if you do those things, and also make sure you have a fire extinguisher on hand. But if you do those things, it's really not that hard to do. And now I'm going to clean up the solder on this one. I cleaned up all the solder on the outside of the tubing. Now I have to clean up the solder that's on the inside of the tubing. And I use a triangular knife. It's also known as a solder scraper. And I put that inside the tubing and just turn that around. And then you can look and see if you have all the solder cleaned up. It will have a shiny surface if you do. And the reason I need to clean this up is because solder does not stick to dirty surfaces. So I need to clean up all the junk that's on there and all the tarnish. I'm going to use this to clean up on all the inside of the tubing where I need to solder. I don't need to clean up all the inside of the tubing if I don't need to solder there. So I'm going to clean that up. And then after I do this, there's one more step I'm going to take in the process. I'll show you that in just a minute. I also need to clean inside of here. That's where the tubes go that hold the slide together. I used the solder scraper. Now I'm going to do one last thing to clean those up a little better. I have this rod and it has a slot in it, and what I do with that is I put the sandpaper in there like that and then turn that around. Now I'm going to turn on the bench motor and clean up that solder inside. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more band instrument repair videos and look in the description below for links to related videos.